not giving a fuck. Like just it sounds the ultimate
Hey,
yeah, the ultimate test of peace is when you can truly just you don't give a fuck. Like
ooh, one. All right, we're good.
yeah,
Oh, Shirtless podcast.
Shirtless podcast.
Anxiety.
One. Boom.
Anxiety.
You have a better angle than me. I need to have like that nice level angle so I look,
Like all jacked up.
yeah, it's like it's a downward angle so I don't look as fucking like well, you're just shredded as fuck right now too, so it helps.
It's an anxiety shredded.
See,
It actually really
anxiety.
is.
It is
I'm like
anxiety.
so
Like
shredded. I'm like, why am I anxious about being?
yeah. Well, no, and I mean, and that's it's kind of like the idea of anxiety. Like I was communicating with one of my it kind of came up like the idea of doing this came up with because a client of mine, a nutrition client, was talking about anxiety, and I'm no fucking doctor. I've read through psychology over the years. I've dealt with it myself. Like I was went to the VA and diagnosed with clinical anxiety, depression, PTSD, and they put me on all the medications, but I kind of like got to the point where it was like it was helping, but I was like a zombie of who I am, and I
Mm,
just wasn't okay with that. So I kind of like started researching and looking into ways to uh, kind of get out of that mindset. It comes and goes as anything does. Like I tell people at the end of the day, like emotions literally are energy in motion. Like if you hold on to that, like it's gonna drag you around. So like anxiety is the idea of like you're constantly anxious about what could happen when you never know. It's like the idea of living in fear. Like you don't know if this is gonna happen, but it's
yeah.
making you anxious. Like you're always living. You're not as present as you are looking for something. You're always seeking something. Uh, and I understand that. Like I understand the drive of wanting to pursue things, but when you allow it to overwhelm you, that's what creates that like constant state of anxiety, which I think most people struggle with. And some of the things that I've done to help me out was journaling, writing down my thoughts. To someone that struggles with high levels of anxiety, is it's just thoughts always in your head. Like you can't stop thinking. And the thing is, like if you don't have anyone you can communicate with, or you feel comfortable communicating, because that's the biggest problem. Most people, they don't feel comfortable communicating these emotions with people. Is write it down, man. Like when I started writing, it didn't make any sense. It was just me dumping my feelings out on paper. But as I got familiar and comfortable with doing that, it made it a lot easier to understand that some anxiety is like situational and some is just it's a chemical imbalance. But and I don't know, man. Like I tell people, like the way you think and the way you speak to yourself is ultimately going to drive who you become. Kai Green said it best: thoughts become things, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it's true. Like I tell people like the idea there are those who think they can and those who think they can't. They're both usually right. When someone says, "Oh, I'm trying," I'm like, just stop saying you're trying and just saying you're doing. You don't know when, or you don't know. It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when it's going to happen. Like I'm going to squat 800 pounds in reps.
Mm,
I know it's going to happen. I don't know when. Could it be, this my next powerlifting meet coming up? Next year could it be the one after that? I don't know. It's going to happen. Like people keep attaching like a time frame to something. In the process of doing that, it creates that level of anxiety. I have to do this now. I have to do this then. I have to do this. Like set the goal and understand you're going to get there, and that's what you have to do. Like everyone attaches that to a time frame. They put like uh, a due date, on it. And when you're coming up to that, shit happens in life that it may push that date further back. So yeah, I mean it's a touchy subject with a lot of people, but this is just my perspective, how I've learned to deal with my anxiety, and it's helped me a lot. And a lot of the clients that I've spoke with, it's helped, man. Like no more trying. Don't say try. Just I am. I will. I can. I must. Stuff like this. Like because when you start thinking about the can'ts or the tries or the don'ts or the maybes, that's where you start putting yourself in that native mindset. And I tell people like the words you speak, it's a frequency that comes out, and as you hear it, it creates a pathway in your brain, like from a neurological standpoint. Because it is energy, it's frequency, and It's like programming computer. Like the way you speak to yourself is ultimately how you program your own computer.
Yeah, and it's funny that we're doing this because personally, from my standpoint of experience with anxiety, to be honest, I've only kind of grasped the concept once, and I've actually, I guess, experienced it, but it's in such a weird way. Um, I don't ever feel like I ever get anxiety or anxious about anything in particular, except for like, let's say, when I'm getting ready for a bodybuilding show, about to go into like stage and about to compete and about to like pose and stuff like that. I get a little bit anxious. I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? What's gonna go? Am I gonna do this right? Am I gonna do this wrong? Like, what if I screw up? What if I don't screw up? What all these like thoughts are like coming into my head. But long ago, I didn't realize that's what anxiety was because I never really, like, for me, when I think those things, I still go out and do it in that particular moment rather than just like, oh, okay, I have all these thoughts in my head and all of a sudden, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. Like, I think that's where like the anxiety becomes more of like something that could set you back rather than move you forward. It's always like, what is it, like the something about fear? Like if you're scared of something, you're not going to do it. But at the same time, if you're scared of something, still give it a go and see what it's like. So in terms of like anxiety, that's kind of how I look at it. Like, yes, it's still scary. It's still like mind boggling, mind breaking. It's like, hey, I don't want to do this. I'm too scared. I'm going to do this. But at the end of the day, you just go in and you just do it. And that's why I've never once experienced anxiety as what most people experience it as. Because even though I know it's a scary place to be, it's a scary thought, scary feelings, I'm still just like, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I didn't realize that's what that feeling of anxiety like is because again, I didn't experience it like most people did. But the one time when I fully grasped what it actually is and why so many different people feel that way towards it, I was high.
Yeah.
So like I'm sure most of you have like done some stuff here and there, especially like
Yeah. Most people.
pot
Yeah.
and weed and stuff like that. I was smoking, and when I was getting all these like random thoughts in my head that just it never stopped. It just kept on going and
It
going.
became overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was like so many different possibilities. Like, what if this happened? What if they think this way? What if they think this way? Like, what am I doing? And it just, I was just like trapped in such a position where I couldn't really do anything or like think about anything, but just think about like all the bad things that could potentially happen. And that was my firsthand experience of like anxiety. But I would say I have like um, a much more traumatic experience with it as a child, but I never really thought that as an anxiety. I mean, most people would if I were to
Yeah.
explain the situation, but I'll probably save that towards the very end
Yeah.
of this entire podcast. Charles, so what are in some what situations have you been where you've like experienced high anxiety?
A lot. Like I said, and so kind of how you're explaining your experience with being high is that's kind of what clinical like a clinical diagnosis of anxiety is. And there are some people that are like it can be crippling, and there's like high functioning anxiety, which is kind of what I am. Uh, but it's kind of like how you were mentioning, being on stage, like that's there. Some people can. And when they say fear, it's face everything and run, or face everything and rise. So I know when I reach those moments of like high anxiety, like on the other side of that is something that's worth it, because it's the idea of like anything that's worth it, you're gonna have to work for in life. Like you're gonna have to push through that wall. You're gonna have to push. You have to break through that limit. Goku, limit breaker, dude. Like you
Yeah.
got to fucking break through that limit. You have to understand on the other side of that is the things you crave the most, because that's when it's the most uncomfortable, and it's the most fearful, and it's the highest level of anxiety, because in an anxiousness, because you're creating it's like the risk versus reward situation. Like the higher the risk, the higher the reward,
Mhm.
so on and so forth. But you see this grand level of something, and a lot of people get there and they allow their anxiety to just pull them back. And it's like, man, if you just keep doing, like, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If you
Mhm.
just keep pushing through that wall, you're gonna break through that. uh Now, it's for the people, like I said, who get crippled by it, man. Like one of the things I always say is action over anxiety. So what I started practicing years ago is certain habits is like if my anxiety starts overwhelming me, like there's songs that I like 80s music, dude. I can't be in a bad mood and listen to 80s music, like Aha, like any of the 80s hair bands. I'd literally just put on 80s music and like listen to it. Or I would get up and do something like anything that could help pull me out of that anxious thought process, or even getting a pen and a paper and writing down things that I'm grateful for, or naming things within the vicinity of like that you're grateful for, kind of like brings you back into it roots you in the now. And
Mm.
that's where people have to understand about anxiousness is like you're pulling yourself out of the present and trying to project yourself into the future. uh now depression is the exact opposite. Depression is like you live in the past. So
Yeah,
uh
that's
the main thing,
actually
yeah.
an interesting way. Now that you said it that way, like I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what it is. Usually when people are depressed and stuff like that, it's always thinking about stuff that happened way back in the
Yeah,
past.
you're never depressed about things that could potentially happen.
Mhm,
You're
yes.
depressed about things that have happened because the depression is already it's a downer. It pulls you down. Like those are things you've experienced. Like so you have an emotion already attached to it, a sense of sadness, a sense of angst or something. Well, not angst, because angst is more of anxious.
Mm.
So yeah, depression is living in the past, and anxiety is living in the future.
But
And that's why they
what's in
say,
the middle?
huh?
What's in the middle? Like
Peace, the
what's?
present.
Oh, okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. What is it? Man, there's like so many different sayings. God, I can't remember all of them. There's like the one from Kung Fu Panda. He says that the turtle. It's like living in the past is something, living in the future is this. That's what they say. Uh, they call it the present because it's a gift.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the idea of living in the present is where you're going to be most at peace, because that's where you're in a sense of balance,
Mm.
and you're going to be most at peace when life is balanced. When you teeter too much towards anxiety, it gets this way. Then in depression, that's when you start getting rocky, and you're less at peace because you're living between the
Between
two
the
realms. That you're living between a past and a future, and instead of living within the now.
mm.
And understanding that this point, like this point now, is eventually going to be the same point in a future. Like you're never going to go back. Like you're not going to go back. Like, but you can, if you keep bringing up and thinking about the past, like it's constantly going to be behind you, because you don't allow it to, you don't allow yourself to pace forward in life. You keep
Mm.
pulling it up with you. So a lot of people, the depression anxiety block has such a, it gets in such a vicious cycle, because like you think about the past and you bring up all those emotions to right behind you, and then that makes you want to, like, oh my god, here's the future, I gotta go, and you get stuck in that, I need to go to get away from this. But
Mm.
when you're constantly thinking about this, you're never here. But when you stay here in the present, and you just keep moving along, the past moves away and you move into the future instead of
Close.
living there. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree. Again, like you said, it's funny when you mentioned the depression part of it. I'm just like, oh, that actually makes sense because I've never once seen someone that's like depressed about their future. You know what I
No,
mean? And
no,
I've never once
you
seen
can't
someone
be.
anxious about their past. But you rarely see people ever at peace with themselves because with all the things that come at them, like in life, it's hard for people to just find that happy medium that says, you know what, I'm one at peace. But you have like all these responsibilities you have to do and all these high expectations of yourself or what people expect of you, that sometimes that creates a little bit of a depression state of mind and like an anxious state of mind. But how would one be able to get to that point where they're at peace with themselves? What would one have to do to realize, you know what, I'm at peace, I just have to move forward? I think that's the interesting part.
How to like really truly, I want to like simplify this as much as possible to like the ultimate, uh not giving a fuck. Like just it sounds, the ultimate,
Hey,
yeah, the ultimate test of peace is when you can truly just, you don't give a fuck. Like I'm I'm content where I'm at, and contentment is complacent is completely different. Like you can be content with where you're at, like happy or joyous. love where you're at because of where you're going,
Mm.
and that's okay. That's what you have to be like, man. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, my past is just fucking trickled with bullshit and all kinds of stuff that I don't regret, but I'm not. I look back and I'm like, ooh, I could have did those things differently. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, the reflection upon those past events and the process of learning has brought me to where I'm at now. And I mean, it's a blessing within itself. It can be a curse sometimes because people come to me a lot, and it's funny. One of the clients that I do through massage just recently, I was like talking with him about stuff similar to this, and he's like, man, you should really be like a life coach or like a motivational speaker. And it's like, it's something I'm going to work on eventually because, you and I've had people, tell me to do my own podcast. I get a few other friends that have mentioned doing podcasts or bringing me on. It's something I like doing. Like these are conversations I've had frequently throughout my life because it's just, you reach a point in your life where you're just like, you are,
Yeah.
the aim I tell people is, and it comes off as the idea of cocky, but it's just, you just have to become, when you become so confident with who you are and who you can be, and you can see the endless possibilities that you can walk into. There's endless possibilities I can walk into, but that's on me to just keep moving forward. Uh, and are there going to be things that could almost block those paths along the way? Yeah, I can, but I can still reroute and get throughout life. It's, you do try to take that, and I think what makes it easier for me is, we talked about it the other day. I don't look for shortcuts, A to B. I pick a path and it's gone. And as you do that,
Hold
you
on.
reach this stuff.
Wait,
Yeah,
wait,
you
wait,
poop, 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 poop. Yeah, you hit it.
wait.
Yeah, because like people will be going towards a path and they're off and they're veering off. They're like, oh, I want to shortcut over to here. I'm like, you were just right there by that path. You were just right by that point you wanted to be at,
Mm.
but you couldn't see it because you had no faith.
So we're actually gonna cut this short where this is at, because we generally want to see what people think, and we don't want people to kind of like have to go through like a long video.
Yeah,
We might be doing maybe like short 5 to 10, 15 minutes of these
I'm
gradually.
perfect with that.
Have you give like a little bit of understanding of like what is it that we're talking about. And as I was trying to interrupt Charles, and I think a really good topic that he actually brought up was the point A to point B, which we can use that for that next video and explain to you guys certain ways to help you reach your goals and how to like set goals and how to not stray away from your goals. But generally, if we were to sum things up in like the simplest, easy possible way, is that if you want to truly be happy and not worried about being anxious, not worry about being depressed, not worry about the past, not worry about the future, you have to be able to live in the moment and simply just not give a fuck.
That's it. Like it's, and you'll hear it all the time. Well, it's easier said than done. Shut the fuck up. The moment you say it's easier said than done, you just checked it off. Like, oh, I'm not going to do it. It is that easy. Because if you talk to, it's like someone asked me the other day, not to veer off topic too much, but someone like, I was doing my handstands on my Bosu ball, and someone's like, man, that must be hard. I was like, no, it's not hard. How long did it take?
Yeah, seriously. Because
I was like, it's as long as it took.
yeah,
How much do you lift? Enough. Like, what about this? How long did it take you? It took me however long it took me to get here. Like, I'm not gonna give you a number, a date, or anything, man, because like this is me. The moment you look at me and you think about how long it took me, you could do it way before me.
yeah.
Honestly, the reality is like it took me a couple days to do a handstand on a Bosu ball. A couple days.
Mm.
But I practice it every day.
Yeah, you just have to be willing to be able to just do it.
I was willing to just sit down and do it and keep practicing on it. I mean, it helped that I have the ability to like overhead press like 275 or 255, 275 strict press, like barbell. Yeah. So I can overhead press my body weight pretty easy. So that is a factor for some people, is that if you don't have the shoulder strength to, do it. But these are things I've practiced throughout my life, like strong, core strength, everything that I tell people about that. But you can't, like, don't say, oh, easier said than done. Literally, like, I can sit here and say picking up my phone is easier said than done. Because right now, me talking about it is less energy than me literally doing this. Less energy. It's easier said than done. Always. Everything in life is easier said than done. But to say that is such a fucking bullshit cop-out for so many people.
Just makes you look lazy.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. It's literally, here's what it's saying. It's saying, I'm too lazy to do it.
Yeah. And when you're too lazy to do certain things in your life, that's where like the anxious part of
It bleed, yeah, it bleeds in everything, dude. Every part of your fucking life. Yeah.
because now you think, oh, I could have had the chance to do this in the past, but I didn't do it. But then, like when you're kind of too lazy to do it in the future, in the moment, you're like, oh, I could have done this, but I can't really do it now because it's too late. So now that it's too late to do this, what am I going to do now? How am I going to like change this and stuff like that? It's like just we know, we get it.
Just do it.
It's easier said than done, but like just do the action and follow through.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Nike, just do it. Just do it. It's
and
dumb.
Until the next one, which is going to be focused on, what did we say? Point A to point
B.
Goal set.
Yeah, point A to point B. Yeah, so
point A to point B. Goal settings. So we're testing this stuff out. And this
point A to point B. Yes.
did I record this? I'll edit that out. So, oh fuck.